So we can see here that you can see on this little chart that the overall spending, I mean, you can see where it just completely dropped off last April. So just when everything happened, all of the restrictions were implemented, the quarantine started happening, all of that, it was like somebody dropped a cinder block. And then it slowly started to creep up and kind of resume some normalcy, but had always remained kind of under where we had started. And then what you can see is in January, there's kind of a spike up, and then obviously in March, a big spike. Now, the obvious reason for that is that that's when everybody, or many people, I know not everybody, but many people received stimulus payments. And so what we can see here is that some statistics on the side, consumer spending rose almost 11%. And that equated to over $330 billion, which is just kind of crazy to think about, but it makes perfect sense when you consider that the disposable income for the average individual who did receive a stimulus payment went up significantly in January, and then, quite a bit more in March when the second portion of the stimulus payments were paid out. So what I'm happy to see here is that we had already been trending upward. So there was this conception that the economy was going to come to a standstill because of COVID. And there were certain sectors that were obviously hit very, very hard. But the spending habits just kind of morphed into some different areas. So many people were able to save significantly. And you can see here that, excuse me, fourth quarter of last year, the personal savings rate was 13%. And in first quarter of this year, it's 21%. So that means people are saving a lot. On average, it used to be even lower than 8%. And there were times where the American average was even lower than that. So we're saving quite a bit. However, I personally know that there's also a lot of spending that goes hand in hand with that. And what we're not seeing represented here is any potential credit card debt that's been accumulated. So as always, with everything I preach, it's really about connecting to your spending and increasing your awareness so that it doesn't cause any harm to you. Now, the biggest three categories that we've seen an increase in are cars. So whether that's a new car or a used car, a lot of people are in the market for a car. I was kind of surprised that was the first one on the list. But I guess now that people are getting on the road again and kind of out and about, that's something that was very tempting, very alluring, and seems to be one of the big purchases so far for this year. Food and beverage is up next, and then restaurants, hotel, and travel, which I'm glad to see because I know that was an industry that got hit very, very hard with everything. So it's nice to see some sort of a comeback there. And personally, as you all know, I have shared with you many times that food is an area of big spending for us in general. And now that we're kind of starting to be out and about, it's kind of seems to be ticking up for everyone across the board. So these are just areas to keep an eye on. Ed, any thoughts there? I saw you come off mute. Were you going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say that the cars is actually, when I was doing the research for this webinar, cars is in the durable goods category, and cars were the biggest expense, but it's also other durable goods, things that will last at least a year. So it's home appliances, other types of vehicles. So people might have bought motorcycle, ATV, other toys like that, RVs. Yeah. So there's like a lot in that cars category. Cars was definitely the biggest expense in that category, but there's lots of other durable goods that people are buying, those bigger high ticket purchases as well.
All right, that makes more sense because I was like, wow, cars. How many people are buying cars?
It is still a lot of cars, though. It was definitely a big portion of that top category.
Yeah, well, and what was funny, I was telling Ed as we were getting ready for this, there is apparently a chip shortage on used cars. So the car dealerships are trying to buy up a lot of cars, and they want to get all the used cars back in because there's a big demand for it. So there's a lot going on in the car industry. So I see somebody just jumped in. Hi, Bobby. I just wanted to say hello to you. We're just talking about COVID snapback spending and how, as life starts to turn again, the world starts to turn again and life resumes, there's a lot of an uptick in spending that we're seeing. So the reason I touch on all of these is so that you can start to tune in. And the name of the game, as every one of you knows, is awareness and intention. So what I really want to just kind of share with the group and anyone who's listening or watching the recording is that we are in a very transitional period in life again. So, I mean, last year when everything kind of hit, it was very abrupt. Our lives were tipped upside down and we had to really kind of pivot and figure things out. And you saw that's where the spending dropped off. But then as, people started to stabilize and start to be able to figure out how to live inside the circumstances, the spending came up, but it was just in different areas. So now what's happening when I work with all of my clients, what's happening is we've adapted to the life we've had to live for the last year. And now we're starting to kind of get back to the things we used to do before. It's not quite as abrupt, but it also is. Like, we are kind of coming to a crossroad quickly. And what I want to encourage people to do is just to watch out for certain things that might sabotage your spending plan, your budget, and they could kind of just, derail some of your numbers if you're not careful. So one of the top things that I'm already seeing people experience is that a chaotic schedule equals chaotic spending. And what I mean by this is that, okay, all of a sudden life is going back. People with children the kids are back in soccer practice, baseball practice. They're back at school full time. Social activities are starting to resume. Some people are getting more comfortable going out and about more. So there's just more activity that we haven't been used to. And we got used to a very sedentary situation. And now we're trying to manage everything that we were managing inside of that, which included work and all of the things that we've had to manage just inside the pandemic, and now add in all of the other things that we haven't been used to doing. And so I just really want people to tune into the fact that when your schedule is chaotic, it can often lead to excessive spending because you're not at home to cook meals. So you end up picking up food or ordering delivery. Some people have gained some weight during the pandemic. So there's new clothing that needs to be purchased and things like that. And when we're scattered and kind of disconnected from a regular routine, we can be very reactive and reactionary in our spending. So it's just important to kind of take a breath as we kind of ease back into old activities and start really noticing the things that we need to be spending on, just to be aware of it. So I just want that to be a heads up. There's also the ability to justify our wants as needs. So any of you who have worked with me know that a cornerstone of our work together is really tuning in and connecting to your needs and your wants. Well, now it's very easy to say, I really need a new car, or I really need that new wardrobe, or I really need a vacation away. These all may be very valid and relevant. However, this is where you can kind of justify excessive spending at times. Everybody went through a really hard year. There are legitimate needs out there. I think a lot of people have been starved for social activity, physical activity, mental activity. And so there are many needs that we're going to need to meet for ourselves. And I think it's easy to dress up the things we want and convince ourselves that we need them to justify them on our spending. So just taking a moment to really tune into what's going on there and whether it's a need or a want. I think we're also, and have been now for quite a long time, experiencing pandemic fatigue spending. I do think that that's easing, but I think now there's the snapback. And that's what I've been warning against, is it's like we've been kind of drained from everything that's been going on. And now it's like, woohoo, let's go. And so I think this is where the I deserve it comes in. And I got to be honest, it was just my birthday, like I said, and I fully allowed myself to enjoy it. We were intentional about our spending, and there were some extras. And I was like, you know what? I deserve it. So I can personally attest that this one is floating around out there. And again, the idea always being to just kind of catch yourself in that thinking. It's not that you don't deserve to be comfortable, to be happy, to be fulfilled. And sometimes you might use money to fulfill on that. You just want to be honest with yourself about it. There's also been just a radical disconnect in general, where it's kind of like, I just don't care what it does. I've been cooped up. I've been stressed out. I've been unhappy. I haven't seen the people that I love, and I just don't care. I'm going to intentionally disregard it and do what I want to do. So these are the things I want everyone to just be aware and just start listening to yourself. And I've got some recommendations here of how to kind of counter these. But as I'm working with my clients, I'm starting to hear these. I'm hearing it in my own language, my own speaking. Ed and I's our experience between the birthday, the wedding, the honeymoon. We've had to really kind of be honest with ourselves and evaluate, what's really important to us, because that's a normal time to justify overspending anyway. And then coming out of the situation that we've been in, it could be really easy to just go bananas with it, which I don't want to do. So a couple of recommendations on how to potentially counter some of these things are to put new spending into your plan. So anyone who works with me should be managing a spending plan. For those of you who maybe aren't familiar with that, it's basically a budget. We don't call it a budget because it's just a plan of how you intend to use your money. So this might sound like a no-brainer of, well, yeah, put the spending into your plan. However, what I mean by that is that you want to put new spending. So as you begin to socialize again, as the kids begin to participate in more activities, as you start kind of sprucing up the house or the wardrobe, being deliberate and proactively plugging that spending in, and not just kind of looking back after the fact and saying, uh-oh, look what I did. So really taking the time to sit down and deliberately look forward a little bit. I also always want people to continue to track your spending. So you know that I am just going to scream this from the rooftops for the rest of my life, is to just keep track of where the money's going. So that way you can look at it and say, well, is this where I want it to continue to do, or continue to go, or do I need to be doing something different, making different choices? So always keeping that connection, always staying engaged so that you can see what you're doing and be intentional with what you want to be doing. I also really encourage people, this is not one that I really get into very often, but really encourage people to start keeping track of and proactively managing their time. So using some sort of the scheduling tool, because like I said, chaotic schedule equals chaotic spending. And so as more activity starts to happen in life, maybe mapping out, oh gosh, I am running a lot more errands, or I am back in the office, or the kids are very busy, whatever it might be, making sure that you've got the time to take care of everything else scheduled in deliberately as well. It's very easy to get swept up in the to-do list and then overspend in other areas for convenience. So just kind of tuning into not only how you're spending your money, but also how you're spending your time. Okay. I also want people to I want you to allow yourself to want and to indulge. Of course, on a level that's appropriate, not overly indulgent, but it has been just a very, very hard year. I think even people who were impacted minimally, all the way up to the people who had, devastating losses during the year, across the board, it's just been a very difficult year. And I was personally talking with a client earlier today about how, yes, okay, the pandemic may be tapering down, but I think we're going to need I don't know if it's a year, I don't know if it's a few months, but we're going to need a period of recuperation and recovery. And I think that's going to look different for everyone. And I think there's going to be some similar things, though, that are inside of it, of really getting, spending some time on our well-being. I know a lot of people have throughout this period, but I know a lot of people haven't. And personally, it's been just a really tough year for me. And now I'm seeing that I need to start to really nurture my mental well-being, get back to taking care of my physical well-being, and really just allow myself to give myself what I need during this period. So I want you guys to really allow yourself to be able to treat yourself to what you need and be intentional by raising your point of awareness around it, which you've all heard me talk about before. From there, I also think it's important just to review your short-term savings account and any of those non-monthly expenses that are coming up. So we always talk about these, and especially as we head into summer, there's, the urge or the desire to travel. Patricia, I know you've got your big move coming up pretty soon. And I know you've kind of been looking at, next phases in life and what you want to be doing. So I think there's just this transitional period that's kind of upon us all, and that it's just a great time to really connect with what the upcoming expenses will be and being intentional about how to prepare for those, how to still allow yourself to kind of re-enter the world and get back to some of your old activities and be balancing all of this out. I bring all of this up because I just think it's going to be a critical time to really stay deeply connected to your resources. And as you all know, I generally speak about time, energy, and money. So really just being aware and being intentional in how you're using those resources and deliberately trying to use them in a way that's going to help you really kind of recover from the time that we've all gone through lately.